Duke Nathaniel tore his daughter's name from the christening register and dropped the page at his wife's feet. "You deceived me, Evelyn. Parliament will hear the truth today." The torn parchment landed face down upon the black and white marble, its ragged edge trembling in the draught from the chapel doors. A drop of holy water struck the unfinished entry and spread through the ink where the infant's name had been written, Lady Charlotte Ann Harcourt. In Duchess Evelyn's arms, the baby stirred beneath her ivory christening shawl. Charlotte was only 6 weeks old. She knew nothing of legitimacy, inheritance, or the cruelty a father could conceal beneath a measured voice. She merely turned toward Evelyn's warmth and closed one tiny hand around the silver chain at her mother's throat. The chapel was filled with witnesses. 2 bishops stood beside the font. Members of the House of Lords occupied the front pews. Behind them sat the county magistrate, the family solicitor, senior tenants from Ashbourne, and enough titled guests to ensure that Nathaniel's accusation would reach every drawing room in London before nightfall. Evelyn looked at her husband. He wore the dark blue coat she had ordered for the christening, with the Harcourt star embroidered in silver at the collar. His expression was composed, but his right hand remained clenched beside him. He had rehearsed this. "What truth?" Evelyn asked. She spoke quietly. The silence inside the chapel carried her words farther than a scream would have. Nathaniel's uncle, Lord Percival Harcourt, stepped forward from beside the altar. At 60, he possessed the polished manners of a courtier and the pale, patient eyes of a man accustomed to waiting for others to make mistakes. He held a packet of letters bound with green ribbon. "These were discovered in Her Grace's private writing desk," Percival announced. "They document an improper attachment between the Duchess and Captain Julian Mercer during His Grace's absence in Vienna." A murmur moved through the pews. Evelyn did not look at the letters. She looked at Nathaniel. "You entered my private rooms?" "I authorized the search," he replied. "After I showed you that money was disappearing from the estate?" A flicker crossed his face. 3 weeks earlier, Evelyn had placed a column of figures before him in the library. Nearly £11,000 had vanished through false maintenance accounts, invented shipments, and payments to men who did not exist. Nathaniel had dismissed the discrepancies as clerical errors. When she insisted on examining the sealed inheritance ledgers, he had accused her of trying to control a title that belonged to him. Now Evelyn understood why. "You are not standing here because you believe those letters," she said. "You are standing here because removing me prevents me from completing the audit." Lady Celestine Vale sat in the first pew, wearing dove-gray silk and an expression of exquisite sorrow. Her father owned coal fields, shipping interests, and a fortune large enough to rescue Ashbourne from almost any debt. Almost. Celestine lowered her eyes when Evelyn looked at her, but not before Evelyn noticed the ducal household keys hanging from her waist. Evelyn's keys. "You surrendered your right to question my judgment," Nathaniel said, "when you placed another man's child beneath my roof." Charlotte awoke fully and began to cry. The sound pierced the chapel. For one terrible moment, Nathaniel's gaze dropped to his daughter. Pain appeared in his eyes, real pain, not the performance he had prepared for Parliament. He could have crossed the marble. He could have touched Charlotte's cheek, remembered the nights he had carried her through the nursery, and demanded proof worthy of the harm he was about to cause. Instead, he turned to the parliamentary clerk. "Record the child as illegitimate." The clerk hesitated. "Your Grace, the baptism has not been completed." "It will not be completed under my name." Evelyn felt something inside her become perfectly still. The letters could be disproved. The financial records could be traced, but Nathaniel had chosen to disgrace their daughter before examining either. Whatever truth emerged later, this moment would remain his. Lord Percival extended a document. Nathaniel signed it on the altar. "By this order," Percival declared, "the Duchess is relieved of authority over the Ashbourne household and its accounts pending a formal inquiry. The child will remain under the protection of the Harcourt family." Evelyn tightened her arms around Charlotte. "You will not take her." Nathaniel's jaw hardened. "The child stays. You have just declared that she is not yours. She remains an infant born beneath my roof. Her custody must be settled lawfully." "No," Evelyn said. "You want control of her, because if I leave with Charlotte, you cannot control what I discover." 2 guards advanced from the chapel wall. Nathaniel did not order them to stop. Evelyn glanced toward the side aisle. Her maid, Hannah, stood rigid beside a pillar, one hand pressed to her mouth. Beyond her, near the servants' entrance, a woman in a mud-stained cloak watched from behind the carved screen. Evelyn recognized the stooped shoulders first. Then the scar across the woman's left hand. Mrs. Agnes Bell, the midwife who had delivered Charlotte and supposedly died in a carriage accident 4 weeks ago. Agnes raised one finger to her lips. In her other hand, she held a narrow black ledger. Evelyn's heart struck hard against her ribs. Agnes glanced toward Percival, then toward the passage behind the vestry. Terror tightened her face. She began moving toward the door. Evelyn needed time. "Before you remove my daughter," she said, turning back to Nathaniel, "allow me to see the letters." Percival's fingers tightened around the packet. Nathaniel noticed. "Give them to her," he ordered. Percival recovered quickly. "Their contents are indecent. Surely we need not subject this gathering." "You have already subjected my child to them," Evelyn said. "Give them to me." Nathaniel took the packet from his uncle and placed it in her free hand. The first letter was addressed to Captain Mercer. The handwriting resembled Evelyn's, enough to deceive someone who remembered only its shape. It mentioned a blue gown purchased from Madame Fournier and an evening spent together while Nathaniel attended the king's reception. Evelyn studied the date. Then she almost laughed. This gown did not exist. Celestine looked up sharply. Evelyn held the letter toward the witnesses. Madame Fournier's shop burned down in March. The blue silk was purchased from Mrs. Dalton in June. Yet this letter, dated in April, describes its silver buttons and the alteration made to its sleeve. Nathaniel's eyes moved to Percival. "A confused date proves nothing," his uncle said. "It proves the writer had access to my household expenses after June." Evelyn examined the remaining pages. Every intimate detail in these letters comes from account books kept inside the estate office. "The office Nathaniel had forbidden her to enter 2 days ago," Percival smiled faintly. "Or perhaps your grace wrote the letters later and gave them earlier dates." Nathaniel seized upon the explanation because it demanded less of him than admitting doubt. "The inquiry will decide," he said. "Until then, my order stands." Lady Celestine rose and approached. She extended her arms toward Charlotte. "I will ensure the child receives every comfort." Evelyn stepped back. Charlotte's crying grew louder. Across the chapel, the servants' door opened a fraction. Agnes was disappearing into the corridor. Evelyn looked at Hannah. One glance was enough. 7 years of shared routines passed silently between mistress and maid. Hannah hurried forward and stumbled into Celestine, sending a prayer book and embroidered reticule tumbling across the marble. As guests recoiled, Evelyn moved. She slipped behind the carved screen, passed through the servants' door, and entered the narrow stone corridor. Charlotte's cries echoed against the walls. Ahead, Agnes's muddy cloak vanished around a corner. "Mrs. Bell!" The midwife stopped. Her face was gray with exhaustion. A bruise darkened her temple, and dried blood marked the edge of her collar. She thrust the black ledger toward Evelyn. "They lied about the accident," Agnes whispered. "They kept me in a hunting lodge until last night." "Who did?" Agnes looked past Evelyn. Footsteps entered the corridor behind them. "I recorded 2 births at Ashbourne that night," she said. "Your daughter's and another child's." Evelyn stared at her. "Whose child?" Agnes opened the ledger to a page marked with black thread. One entry had been altered, but the original name remained faintly visible beneath the scraped ink. Before Evelyn could read it, a hand shot from the doorway beside Agnes. The midwife was dragged backward into darkness. The ledger fell open at Evelyn's feet, and from the chapel behind her came Nathaniel's voice, ordering the guards to take his daughter by force. Evelyn bent for the black ledger just as the guards entered the corridor. She pushed it beneath Charlotte's christening shawl, then turned before either man could see her hand move. The baby's cries had softened to frightened whimpers. "Her Grace must return to the chapel," said Mr. Wade, captain of Nathaniel's household guard. A muffled struggle came from the dark doorway behind the midwife. Evelyn lunged toward it, but Wade blocked her path. "There is a woman in there." "I heard nothing, Your Grace." "You heard her scream." His face remained expressionless. That told Evelyn more than a confession might have. Nathaniel appeared at the far end of the corridor. Lord Percival followed him, while Lady Celestine waited behind them, with Evelyn's household keys still hanging from her waist. "Give me the child," Nathaniel said. "Agnes Bell is alive." His anger faltered. "The midwife? She was standing here moments ago." Someone dragged her through that door. Percival opened it and revealed a cramped storage room filled with candles and folded altar cloths. It had no window and, apparently, no second exit. It was empty. "You are inventing distractions," Nathaniel said. Evelyn stared at the stone floor. Near Percival's polished shoe lay a smear of fresh mud. A short black thread clung to the iron hinge. "She gave me proof." Percival's eyes dropped toward Charlotte. Evelyn saw the instant he understood where she had hidden it. "The Duchess may be carrying dangerous correspondence," he said. "The child should be searched." Nathaniel recoiled. "You will not search an infant." It was the first boundary he had drawn all morning, but Evelyn felt no gratitude. He had created the danger, and now wished to appear merciful inside it. "Then allow me to leave with her," she said. "No." Charlotte began crying again as Nathaniel reached for her. Evelyn stepped away, but Wade seized her arm. The movement loosened the shawl. For one breathless second, the black corner of the ledger appeared. Celestine saw it. Evelyn pulled the fabric closed before Nathaniel noticed. "Please," Celestine said softly. "This scene is distressing the child. Let me take her to the nursery." "No." Nathaniel's patience broke. "Evelyn, you have been formally relieved of custody. And you signed that order before investigating evidence you knew could be false. I saw letters in your hand. You saw what you wanted to see because her money," Evelyn looked directly at Celestine, "could conceal what has happened to Ashbourne's accounts." Nathaniel's face whitened. The guards separated Evelyn from her daughter. Charlotte's cry became a shriek as Celestine received her. The baby reached toward Evelyn, fingers opening and closing helplessly. Evelyn fought once, fiercely enough that Wade nearly lost his grip. Then she stopped. If she continued, Nathaniel would call her hysterical. Percival would have her confined. The ledger would be found, and Agnes would disappear forever. So Evelyn lowered her hands. Her feeding is recorded in the nursery journal, she told Celestine. She dislikes the left side of the cradle. If she cannot see the window, she will not sleep. Celestine looked almost ashamed. Almost. Evelyn leaned close enough that only she could hear. If Charlotte suffers so much as a scratch, your father's fortune will not protect you from me. Celestine's arms tightened around the baby. Nathaniel ordered Hannah to accompany Charlotte to the nursery. Evelyn watched until her daughter disappeared around the corner. Only then did she turn back to him. You have made your choice. He seemed startled by her calmness. This is temporary, he said. If the inquiry clears you, you announced that your daughter was illegitimate before Parliament. Nothing about that is temporary. For the first time, Nathaniel had no answer. 2 hours later, Evelyn was escorted to her former accounting room and told to gather personal possessions. Every cabinet had been opened, papers covered the carpet, and the drawer containing 7 years of estate audits was empty. Hannah entered after settling Charlotte. They searched me, she whispered, but not the baby. Evelyn drew the black ledger from beneath her gown. She had transferred it while pretending to straighten Charlotte's shawl. Together, they opened it on the desk. Agnes Bell's records were meticulous. Time of labor, presentation of the child, identifying marks, names of witnesses, and medicines administered. Charlotte's entry recorded her birth shortly after 2 in the morning. Below it appeared another infant, a boy born 47 minutes later in the west guest chamber. The mother's name had been scraped away. Beside the entry was a payment of £500, authorized with the initials P.H. Percival Harcourt. If that boy was born under this roof, Hannah said, where is he? Evelyn studied the page. A faint indentation remained beneath the damaged name. She laid a sheet of thin paper over it and gently shaded the surface with charcoal. Letters emerged one by one. Celia Vale. Evelyn stopped breathing. Lady Celestine's older sister had died 6 weeks after Charlotte's birth. The family claimed she had succumbed to a fever in France, but Celia had been at Ashbourne that night. A knock sounded at the door. Evelyn closed the ledger. The family solicitor, Mr. Alderton, entered under guard. His eyes were filled with warning, but he bowed formally. Your Grace, I have been instructed to read the terms governing your removal. As he opened the document, a smaller piece of paper slipped from his sleeve and landed beside Evelyn's shoe. She covered it with her skirt. The carriage will take you to your father's house at 4, he announced. You may bring 1 maid. You may not remove any estate records. After he left, Evelyn picked up the hidden note. 3 hurried lines had been written across it. Do not enter the carriage. The driver has orders to cross Blackwater Bridge. Agnes Bell never had an accident there, but you are meant to. Outside the window, Nathaniel's coach was already waiting. Evelyn folded Mr. Alderton's warning and slipped it into her sleeve. We cannot leave Charlotte here, Hannah said. We will not. Evelyn crossed to the window. The carriage stood in the courtyard below, its horses restless beneath a cold afternoon drizzle. The driver wore Ashbourne livery, but Evelyn did not recognize him. More troubling was the coach itself. The rear wheel had been newly fitted, yet the iron linchpin securing it was old and visibly worn. On a steep descent toward Blackwater Bridge, it could fail with 1 hard turn. They were not merely sending her away, they were arranging an accident that would silence the only person capable of tracing the missing money. Evelyn opened the black ledger again. If Percival had paid Agnes to conceal Celia Vale's child, the boy's existence threatened someone. But Evelyn still did not know whether he was alive or why Charlotte had been declared illegitimate. A key turned in the door. Nathaniel entered alone. His gaze moved from the open trunk to Evelyn's face. "You have 30 minutes. Who selected my driver?" "Percival arranged the carriage." "Of course he did." Nathaniel frowned. "What does that mean?" Evelyn almost showed him the warning. Once she would have trusted him with it, but this morning he had ignored falsified letters, surrendered Charlotte to Celestine, and signed away Evelyn's authority without allowing a proper inquiry. He had made himself useful to her enemies. "It means your uncle now controls my departure, your accounts, and access to your supposed heir." "My supposed heir?" "You should ask Celestine where her sister was on the night Charlotte was born." Nathaniel stiffened. "Celia died in France." "No. She gave birth in Ashbourne's west guest chamber." For a moment he said nothing. Then his eyes dropped to the ledger. Evelyn closed it. "Where did you get that?" "From the dead midwife you insist I imagined." Nathaniel extended his hand. "Give it to me." "So you can give it to Percival? I am still your husband, and this morning you became my accuser." Pain flashed across his face, followed quickly by anger. "If the ledger contains evidence, I can protect it." "You could not protect your daughter's name for the length of a christening." The words struck him silent. A bell rang from the eastern wing. Not the dinner bell, not the servant's bell, the nursery bell. Hannah turned pale. "That is Charlotte's nurse." Evelyn ran. Nathaniel caught her at the corridor, but she tore free and rushed up the main staircase. By the time she reached the nursery, 2 maids were crying outside the door. Inside, Celestine stood beside an empty cradle. "Where is my daughter?" Evelyn demanded. Celestine's face was bloodless. Hannah's assistant took her. "I have no assistant," Hannah said. On the carpet lay Charlotte's silver rattle. Beside it was a narrow strip of black thread, the same kind Agnes had used to mark the ledger. Nathaniel entered behind them. "Seal every gate," he ordered. "No carriage leaves Ashbourne." From the courtyard below came the crack of a whip. Evelyn reached the window in time to see her waiting coach race through the open gates. A woman sat inside, holding a white bundle against her chest. "Charlotte?" The carriage turned toward Blackwater Road, toward the bridge designed to kill Evelyn. Nathaniel reached the stables first, but Evelyn was already mounting a groom's horse. "You cannot ride after childbirth," he said. "Then keep up." She drove the horse through the gates. Nathaniel followed, with 2 guards close behind. The rain had turned Blackwater Road to mud. Fresh wheel tracks cut deeply into it, leading toward the river. Evelyn leaned low over the horse's neck, ignoring the pain through her body. Ahead, the carriage appeared between the trees. Its rear wheel was beginning to shake. "Stop!" Nathaniel shouted. The driver looked back and whipped the horses harder. The road descended sharply toward Blackwater Bridge. Evelyn saw the damaged linchpin sliding free. She urged her horse alongside the carriage. Through the window, she glimpsed a veiled woman holding the white bundle. "Give me my daughter." The woman pulled back her veil. It was Agnes Bell. "Jump!" Evelyn cried. Agnes threw open the door. Nathaniel rode close enough to seize her arm and drag her from the moving coach. The white bundle slipped from her grasp. Evelyn caught it before it struck the road. But there was no baby inside, only a porcelain doll wrapped in Charlotte's christening shawl. The carriage wheel broke apart. The coach overturned against the bridge rail, then plunged into the river. Nathaniel stared at the doll in Evelyn's arms. "Where is Charlotte?" Agnes collapsed in the mud. "Still at Ashbourne. The kidnapping was meant to lure her grace into that carriage." "Who ordered it?" Nathaniel demanded. Agnes looked at him bitterly. "The same man you trusted with her removal." Before she could say more, a gunshot cracked through the trees. Nathaniel pulled Evelyn down as the bullet struck the bridge post. The guards raced toward the woods, but the shooter vanished. Agnes pressed a hand to her wounded side. Evelyn knelt beside her. "Celia Vale's son," Evelyn said. "Is he alive?" "Yes. Where?" Agnes gripped her wrist. "Closer than you think. Percival placed him where no one would question his right to enter Ashbourne." Nathaniel crouched beside them. "Why attack Evelyn? Why accuse Charlotte? Because her Grace found the missing money. If she completed her audit, she would discover that Percival had used Ashbourne funds to support the boy." Nathaniel's face hardened. "Who is his father?" Agnes looked directly at him. "Your late brother, Edward." The answer changed everything. Edward's legitimate son would stand closer to the dukedom than Percival, and might possess a claim powerful enough to fracture the Harcourt inheritance. Percival had hidden the boy, stolen from Ashbourne to maintain him, and now needed Evelyn discredited before she followed the accounts to their source. A horse approached from the estate. Hannah rode it badly, her hair loose beneath her bonnet. "Your Grace," she cried, "Charlotte is safe, but Lord Percival has taken control of the house. He says the Duke has been injured and ordered every gate locked." Nathaniel rose. "He has no authority to issue orders in my name." "You gave it to him this morning," Evelyn said. The truth landed harder than the accusation. Nathaniel had stripped Evelyn of authority, entrusted the estate to Percival, and removed the one person who understood its records. Percival had not seized Ashbourne. Nathaniel had handed it to him. Hannah drew a sealed paper from her coat. "He has also sent this declaration to Parliament." Evelyn broke the seal. The document accused her of abducting Charlotte, attempting to murder Agnes Bell, and fleeing Ashbourne with stolen financial records. At the bottom was Nathaniel's signature, copied from the custody order he had signed upon the altar. Above it, one final sentence had been added. Should the Duke interfere with the inquiry, his mental competence must be questioned. Evelyn looked toward Ashbourne's distant towers. Percival had locked them out of their own home, and Charlotte was inside with him. Nathaniel read Percival's declaration twice. Each word had been constructed from a fragment of truth. Evelyn had left the house with the ledger. Charlotte had vanished from the nursery. Agnes had been found injured beside an overturned carriage. Combined with his copied signature, those facts created a lie, convincing enough to survive until every dangerous witness had disappeared. "My uncle cannot confine us outside Ashbourne," Nathaniel said. "He can if the household believes you ordered it," Evelyn replied. "You gave him your seal, your signature, and the authority you took from me." Nathaniel folded the declaration with rigid precision. "I understand what I did." "No, you understand that Percival deceived you. That is not the same as understanding what you did." His eyes lifted to hers. Evelyn pointed toward the distant estate. "You chose not to examine the letters. You declared Charlotte illegitimate before witnesses. You signed away my authority because Celestine's fortune offered you an escape from debts you were too proud to admit. Percival exploited your decision, but he did not make it." Rain ran from Nathaniel's hair onto his collar. He looked older than he had that morning. "I cannot undo it here." "You cannot undo it anywhere." Agnes groaned beside them. Blood seeped through her gown. Evelyn pushed aside her anger and examined the wound. The bullet had grazed Agnes's ribs, but she had also reopened injuries from her captivity. She needed warmth and a surgeon. A farmhouse stood beyond the river, its chimney releasing a thin line of smoke. Nathaniel carried Agnes there, while Hannah and the guards followed. The farmer's wife recognized Evelyn immediately. "Your Grace." Mrs. Turner stared at the mud covering Evelyn's gown. "We heard you tried to steal the Duke's child. The story reached you already? A rider passed 20 minutes ago. He carried notices bearing his Grace's seal. Percival had prepared the accusation before the christening. Nathaniel gave Mrs. Turner a grim look. My wife stole nothing. The notices are false, the woman curtsied, but uncertainty remained in her eyes. Nathaniel had publicly condemned Evelyn before peers and clergy. A private correction inside a farmhouse could not repair that. Mrs. Turner led Agnes to a bedroom and sent her son for the village surgeon. While Hannah tended the midwife, Evelyn spread the black ledger and Percival's declaration across the kitchen table. She examined the signature first. "It is not merely copied," she said. "It was transferred." Nathaniel leaned closer. A faint, oily border surrounded the ink. Someone had pressed the original signed page against prepared paper while the signature was still wet, producing a reversed impression. That transfer had then been traced. "Who handled the custody order?" Evelyn asked. "Percival. Mr. Alderton, the parliamentary clerk. And Celestine?" She stood beside the altar. Nathaniel's expression changed as another memory returned. "She gave Percival her handkerchief after I signed." "To blot the ink?" "Yes." Evelyn examined the declaration's financial accusations. It claimed she had stolen £11,000, the exact sum she had identified as missing from Ashbourne. Percival had turned her discovery into evidence against her, but he had made an accounting error. "He lists the money as withdrawn from the Dowager Trust," Evelyn said. "That fund cannot be accessed without two signatures, mine and Percival's." "No, yours and the trust beneficiaries." Nathaniel looked at her. "My mother has been dead for 9 years. Then someone has been forging her signature for 9 years." Evelyn took a pencil and began reconstructing the payments from memory. She had spent years reviewing Ashbourne's expenses and could recall unusual sums with unsettling accuracy. £500 to a physician, 800 to a private school, regular quarterly payments to an account identified only as E.H. Then she remembered a name from the servant's wage book, Elias Hart. Nathaniel frowned. The new parliamentary secretary? He arrived at Ashbourne 6 months ago. Percival recommended him. Agnes's words returned to her. Percival placed him where no one would question his right to enter Ashbourne. Elias was perhaps 19 years old, the correct age to be Celia Vale's son. He possessed Edward Harcourt's dark eyes and the same habit of tapping 2 fingers against his leg while thinking. Nathaniel went still as he reached the same conclusion. My nephew has been working inside my house, and Percival has been supporting him with stolen estate money. But if Elias is Edward's legitimate son, why hide him? Why not present him openly? Because Celia and Edward may not have been married, a voice answered from the bedroom doorway. They were. Agnes stood, supported by Hannah, her face pale but determined. She carried a small brass key on a cord around her neck. I witnessed their marriage, she said. So did the rector of St. Jude's. Edward feared that his family would reject Celia, so the ceremony was private. He intended to announce it after returning from Spain. But he died before he returned, Nathaniel said. Agnes nodded. Celia came to Ashbourne carrying the certificate. Lord Percival promised to protect her and the child. Instead, he locked her in the west chamber during labor. After Elias was born, Percival took the certificate and sent the baby away. "And Celia?" Evelyn asked. She tried to tell Lady Celestine. Percival had her confined in France under a physician's care. She died there. Nathaniel closed his eyes. Percival was not concealing Elias to protect the Harcourt succession. He was controlling the young man who might one day inherit it. If Nathaniel died without a lawful child, Elias would become Duke of Ashbourne, and Percival, having raised and financially compromised him, could govern through him. Charlotte's birth had threatened that plan, so he forged evidence against Evelyn to remove Charlotte from the succession, Nathaniel said. Agnes shook her head. That is only half of it. She placed the brass key in Evelyn's palm. This opens a document box beneath the chapel floor. Celia's original marriage certificate is inside, along with letters proving Percival arranged Edward's fatal posting to Spain. Nathaniel stared at her. You mean he murdered my brother? I mean he placed Edward where death was almost certain. A pounding sounded at the farmhouse door. One of Nathaniel's guards looked through the window. Magistrate's men, he warned. At least 12. Nathaniel reached for his pistol, but Evelyn caught his arm. If you resist, Percival's claim that you are unstable will appear true. Then what do you propose? Evelyn looked at the black ledger, the brass key, and the bridge visible through the rain. Percival controlled Ashbourne's gates. He controlled the official story. He expected Evelyn to run, so she would give him exactly what he expected, but not what he wanted. Hannah will take Agnes and the ledger through the orchard path, she said. You will surrender to the magistrate. Nathaniel stared at her. And you? I will return to Ashbourne alone. That is madness. No, Percival believes I still have the ledger. He will bring me inside because he needs it. He will kill you, not before he finds out who else has seen the records. Nathaniel seized her wrist. I will not let you do this. Evelyn looked down at his hand. Slowly he released her. That small movement, the surrender of control rather than another command, was the first sign that he had begun to understand. You do not decide what I risk anymore, she said. But you can decide whether you will finally tell the truth when it costs you something. The magistrate's men surrounded the farmhouse. Evelyn concealed the brass key beneath her sleeve, then opened the front door. I am Duchess Evelyn Harcourt, she announced. I will surrender on one condition. The magistrate stepped forward. What condition? You will take me directly to Lord Percival. From the road behind him came the sound of another horse. A young man in parliamentary dress rode through the rain. Elias Hart. He stopped when he saw Agnes standing inside the farmhouse. The midwife whispered his true name, Elias Harcourt. The young man's face drained of color. Then he drew a pistol, not on Evelyn, but on Nathaniel. My lord, Elias said to Percival's men, his hand trembling, I was ordered to ensure the Duke never returned to Ashbourne alive. Nathaniel did not reach for his pistol. He looked at Elias's trembling hand and saw his dead brother's eyes. If Percival ordered my death, Nathaniel said, why announce it before 12 witnesses? Elias swallowed. Because I will not carry it out. He lowered the pistol and placed it in the mud. The magistrate's men shifted uneasily. Their leader, Mr. Crowley, picked up the weapon. You confess that Lord Percival gave this order? I do. Then you will repeat it under oath. I cannot. Elias glanced toward Ashbourne. Percival has my wife. Nathaniel stared at him. You are married? Her name is Mary Collins. She works in the estate laundry. We married secretly 3 months ago. Percival discovered it and locked her somewhere inside the house. Evelyn understood the design. Percival had raised Elias without revealing his true identity, brought him into Ashbourne as a secretary, and bound him through fear. If Nathaniel died, Percival could unveil Edward's son and control the succession. If Elias resisted, Mary would pay the price. How much do you know about your birth? Evelyn asked. Only what Lord Percival told me, that my mother abandoned me and my father was a nameless soldier. Agnes stepped outside. Your mother was Celia Vale. Your father was Lord Edward Harcourt. Elias stared at her. Agnes described the private wedding, Celia's labor, and the black thread tied around the newborn's wrist. Elias slowly pulled back his left cuff. A faded black thread, preserved beneath glass, hung from a cord around his arm. My nurse said it was the only thing my mother left me. No, Agnes said. She also left letters. Percival hid them beneath the chapel. Elias's face twisted with grief. He had served the man responsible for stealing his name and imprisoning his mother. Worse, Percival had shaped every kindness in his life into a debt. The magistrate cleared his throat. These claims require proof. Until then, my orders remain valid. Whose orders? Evelyn asked. Lord Percival's, bearing the Duke's signature. You now have testimony that the signature was forged. I have the words of an accused woman, an injured midwife, and a young man who arrived carrying a pistol. Evelyn could not fault his caution. Percival's paperwork was stronger than their truth. Take us to Ashbourne, she said. The proof is inside the chapel. Mr. Crowley hesitated, then ordered his men to escort Evelyn, Nathaniel, and Elias. Hannah remained with Agnes and the ledger. As they approached the estate, Nathaniel rode beside Evelyn. You planned to enter alone. I did. Why change your mind? I did not. The magistrate is bringing witnesses. That is better than entering under Percival's private authority. Nathaniel looked toward the towers. Once Charlotte is safe, I will publicly withdraw every accusation. You will do more than withdraw it. What do you require? The truth. All of it. You will state that I warned you about the accounts, that you refused to investigate, and that you declared Charlotte illegitimate without proof. His expression tightened. Such a confession could destroy his political future and subject the Harcourt name to ridicule. Yes, he said at last. Evelyn heard the cost in that single word. At the gates, Percival's guards admitted the magistrate, but confiscated every weapon. Inside the great hall, servants stood in frightened rows. Percival waited beneath the Harcourt portrait gallery. Charlotte rested in his arms. Evelyn stopped breathing. The baby appeared unharmed, but Percival held a small glass bottle beside her shawl. Clear liquid moved inside it. Laudanum. Come closer, Percival said, and the child may receive enough to sleep forever. Nathaniel took one step forward. Evelyn caught his sleeve. Percival smiled. At last, the dutiful parents stand together. Give her to me, Evelyn said. Give me Agnes Bell's ledger. I burned it. The smile vanished. You are lying, perhaps, but if you harm Charlotte, you will never know who has it. Percival glanced toward Elias. You failed me. You lied about my parents. I saved you from becoming a scandal. You kept me because you needed an heir you could control. Percival's expression sharpened. And now you will die beside the family foolish enough to claim you. Elias moved as if to attack, but the guards seized him. Mr. Crowley stepped forward. Lord Percival, I must insist that you release the infant. Percival lifted the bottle. Evelyn forced herself to study him as she would a false account. His hand was steady, but his eyes repeatedly moved toward the western corridor. He was waiting for something. Then she smelled smoke. A servant screamed. Flames erupted behind the chapel doors. Percival was not merely destroying the marriage certificate, he was burning every record hidden beneath the floor. My lord, a guard shouted from the staircase. The fire has reached the nursery wing. Percival looked up instinctively. Evelyn moved. She struck the bottle from his hand and tore Charlotte from his arms. Nathaniel threw himself between them as the glass shattered across the marble. Percival escaped through the smoke while his guards scattered. Charlotte cried against Evelyn's chest, alive, awake, and reaching for her mother's face. Evelyn held her for one desperate second. Then Elias shouted from the chapel entrance, "The document box is still beneath the floor, but Mary is chained beside it." Above them, burning timber collapsed across the chapel doors. Evelyn handed Charlotte to Hannah. "Take her outside. Do not let anyone separate you." Nathaniel seized an iron stand and struck the burning timber across the chapel doors. Elias joined him, beating at the flames with his coat. "There is another entrance," Evelyn said, "through the family crypt." She led Elias down a narrow staircase behind the altar. Smoke filled the passage, turning every breath painful. Beneath the chapel, they found Mary chained to a stone pillar beside a brass document box. "Elias!" He fell to his knees beside her, but the lock would not break. Evelyn pulled Agnes's brass key from her sleeve. It opened Mary's chain first, then the document box. Inside lay Celia and Edward's marriage certificate, letters in Edward's hand, and years of payment records bearing Percival's seal. A burning beam crashed behind them. They escaped through the crypt as flames consumed the chapel floor. Outside, Nathaniel counted the recovered papers. One letter described how Percival had altered Edward's military orders, sending him into an ambush after learning of the marriage. The magistrate read it and turned to his men. "Lord Percival is to be arrested." But Percival had vanished. So had Lady Celestine. They found her an hour later in the library, weeping beside an open safe. She claimed Percival had threatened her, yet Evelyn noticed ashes on her gloves. "You burned something," Evelyn said. Celestine shook her head. Evelyn opened the fireplace grate and recovered half of a financial agreement. It promised Celestine a ducal marriage and control of Charlotte's custody in exchange for her father paying Percival's debts. "You knew," Nathaniel said. "I knew the letters were false," Celestine admitted. "Percival said Evelyn would only be sent away. He never mentioned murder." Nathaniel looked sick. "You allowed me to condemn my wife and child." "You wanted to believe her guilty," Celestine replied. "I merely made it convenient." The truth silenced him. Elias entered carrying a second document recovered from Percival's desk. It was a parliamentary petition requesting Nathaniel's removal for insanity and naming Percival temporary guardian of Ashbourne. Attached was a physician's certificate. The signature belonged to the same doctor who had imprisoned Celia in France. Evelyn studied the date. This was prepared 2 months before Charlotte was born. Percival had always planned to remove Nathaniel. Evelyn's audit and Charlotte's birth had only forced him to act sooner. A servant rushed into the library. "Your Graces, the South gatekeeper saw Lord Percival riding toward London." "When?" Nathaniel asked. "Nearly an hour ago." Evelyn looked at the parliamentary petition. "He is not fleeing. Tomorrow, Parliament would hear the case concerning Charlotte's legitimacy. If Percival presented his accusations first, every document they carried could be dismissed as evidence fabricated by an unstable duke and his disgraced wife. Nathaniel reached for his coat. "We leave for London tonight." Evelyn folded the surviving certificate and placed it inside her gown. "Then this time," she said, "we arrive before the lie." They reached London shortly after dawn. Evelyn had not slept. Charlotte rested safely, with Hannah, at the Ashbourne townhouse, guarded by men chosen by Mr. Alderton rather than Percival. Agnes remained at the estate, under the surgeon's care, while Elias and Mary travelled separately with the Black Ledger. Nathaniel stood beside Evelyn outside the parliamentary chamber. "You need not face them," he said. Evelyn looked at the carved doors. "You made the accusation public. The answer must be public as well." When the doors opened, every bench was occupied. Percival stood before the assembled peers, dressed in mourning black. Beside him waited the physician who had signed Nathaniel's incompetence certificate. Percival had already spoken. The clerk read the allegations. Duchess Evelyn had committed adultery, fabricated financial records, abducted her own child, and manipulated Nathaniel during an episode of mental instability. Then Nathaniel entered. Murmurs spread through the chamber. Percival feigned surprise. "Nephew, you should be resting." Nathaniel walked to the center floor. "I am here to correct a lie that began with my own cowardice." Evelyn saw several peers lean forward. Nathaniel described the forged letters, the false custody order, and Percival's control of Ashbourne. He did not excuse himself. "My wife warned me that money was disappearing. I refused to investigate because I feared public ruin. I accepted evidence against her because condemning Evelyn was easier than admitting my failures. I declared my daughter illegitimate without proof." The confession cost him exactly what Evelyn had demanded: pride, reputation, and political protection. Percival smiled coldly. A moving speech from a man whose judgment is under examination. The physician presented records claiming Nathaniel had suffered violent delusions for months. Evelyn stepped forward. "These medical visits were charged to Ashbourne," she said, yet the physician was never there. She recited the corresponding entries from memory. On each date, Nathaniel had been attending Parliament, a royal dinner, or a military review before dozens of witnesses. Then Elias entered, carrying the black ledger. Agnes's records confirmed Charlotte's birth and identified every person present. The handwriting matched 20 years of verified entries. The altered page revealed Celia Vale's son, while the payments led directly to Percival's private accounts. Percival's composure finally cracked. "That man is an impostor." Elias placed his parents' marriage certificate before the clerk. Mr. Alderton confirmed Edward's signature. The rector of St. Jude's, summoned during the night, confirmed the ceremony and his own seal. Elias Harcourt was recognized as Edward's lawful son. Percival tried to leave, but the chamber guards closed the doors. Evelyn produced the surviving agreement with Celestine. "Lady Celestine has confessed that she supplied details from my household accounts so Percival could forge the letters. In return, he promised her my place and control of Charlotte." One peer examined the document. "This proves conspiracy, but not that Lord Percival ordered murder." Percival seized upon the distinction. "Exactly. The rest is the invention of a desperate woman." Evelyn opened Edward's letters. They showed that Percival knew of the marriage and had altered his military posting. But the final order bore only an army clerk's signature. Still not enough. Then the chamber doors opened again. Agnes Bell entered, leaning on Hannah's arm. Behind her came Mr. Crowley with the driver from the overturned carriage in chains. The driver confessed that Percival had paid him to loosen the wheel and carry Evelyn across Blackwater Bridge. Percival's face became gray, but before the guards could arrest him, the physician drew a small pistol from beneath his coat and seized Elias. "Let us leave," he told Percival, pressing the barrel against Elias's throat. Percival backed toward the side entrance. Nathaniel moved, but Evelyn stopped him. Her attention fixed on the physician's hand. His fingers were stained with the same green ink used in the forged love letters. "You wrote them," she said. The physician smiled. "And unless these doors open, the rightful Harcourt heir will die before Parliament can recognize him." No one moved. The physician, Dr. Silas Morley, held Elias against his chest with the pistol beneath the young man's jaw. Percival stood beside them, one hand gripping the side door. "Open it," Morley ordered. The chamber guards looked toward the presiding lord. Evelyn stepped between them. "You cannot leave," she said. "Even if you pass through that door, every road from London will be watched." Morley smiled. "Then perhaps I will take the heir with me. He is useless to Percival now." Percival's eyes narrowed. Evelyn continued before he could silence her. "Elias was valuable only while his identity remained secret. Percival intended to reveal him after Nathaniel's removal, then control him through money and gratitude. But Parliament has seen the ledger and marriage certificate. Elias no longer needs Percival to prove who he is." "You know nothing of my plans," Percival said. "I know your accounts." She lifted the black ledger. "You spent years hiding payments to Elias as educational expenses. You forged the late Dowager's signature to take money from her trust. You paid Dr. Morley to confine Celia, falsify Nathaniel's medical history, and write the letters used against me." Morley pressed the pistol harder against Elias. "Give me the ledger." Evelyn held it over a nearby candle. "If Elias dies, this burns. Then Percival loses the only record that might let him bargain for mercy." Percival looked at Morley. It was the reaction Evelyn had expected. The two men were allies only while each believed the other necessary. "She is bluffing," Morley said. "No," Percival replied. "She burned nothing at Ashbourne. She values evidence too much." "And you value yourself too much to risk the gallows," Evelyn said. "Tell Morley to release Elias." Percival's face tightened. "You presume to negotiate with me? I managed the fortune you stole for 7 years. I know precisely how cheaply you value everyone except yourself." A murmur of approval moved across the benches. Humiliation reddened Percival's face. "Silas," he said, "lower the pistol." Morley laughed once. "So you can surrender me and claim I acted alone?" His arm shifted. Elias drove his heel down on Morley's foot and threw his head backward. The pistol fired into the ceiling. Nathaniel lunged. He struck Morley's wrist, sending the weapon skidding across the floor. Elias broke free as the guards surrounded the physician. Percival ran through the side door. Evelyn followed. He raced along the gallery connecting Parliament to the committee offices, overturning chairs behind him. At the stairwell, he seized a clerk and held a knife to the man's throat. "Stand back!" Evelyn stopped several feet away. Nathaniel and the guards came up behind her. "There is nowhere left to go," she said. Percival's breathing was ragged. "Ashbourne should have been mine. My elder brother inherited everything. Then his sons inherited after him. I spent my life repairing the mistakes of men who received power merely by birth. So you murdered Edward. I corrected an accident of succession. And Charlotte? Another accident." Nathaniel surged forward, but Evelyn raised her hand. Percival needed to keep speaking. "You forged my letters because I discovered the money," she said. "You should have behaved like a wife. Host dinners, produce sons, leave accounts to men. I did leave them to men. That is why £11,000 vanished." Laughter broke from several witnesses behind the guards. Percival's grip tightened in fury. Evelyn watched the clerk's face. He was terrified, but his right hand rested near an inkstand on the table. She met his eyes, then glanced at Percival's knife. The clerk understood. He hurled the ink into Percival's face and dropped. Nathaniel crossed the distance in 2 strides, drove Percival against the wall, and knocked the knife from his hand. The guards chained him. Percival shouted that Nathaniel would still lose his title, that Evelyn would never erase the scandal, and that Charlotte's name would remain stained. Evelyn returned to the chamber without answering him. There, before Parliament, she completed the evidence chain. The black ledger proved 2 births had occurred at Ashbourne. Agnes confirmed Charlotte's delivery and Evelyn's condition throughout the relevant months. The falsified letters contained purchases recorded only after their supposed dates. Green ink on Morley's hand matched the letters. Celestine's agreement established motive and access. The carriage driver confirmed the attempted murder. Edward's letters, Celia's marriage certificate, and the trust payments proved Percival had concealed Elias while stealing from Ashbourne. The assembled peers formally recognized Elias as Edward Harcourt's lawful son. They also declared that no credible evidence had ever challenged Charlotte's paternity. The clerk brought forward a fresh christening register. Nathaniel looked at Evelyn. Her name should be restored by her mother. Evelyn took the pen. In clear black ink she wrote, "Lady Charlotte Anne Harcourt, lawful daughter of Nathaniel Harcourt, Duke of Ashbourne, and Evelyn Harcourt, Duchess of Ashbourne." This time, no one tore the page. Percival and Morley were committed for trial. Celestine was placed under house confinement, pending charges of conspiracy and affordery. The missing trust funds were frozen, and every parliamentary notice accusing Evelyn was ordered withdrawn. Yet Evelyn knew that legal correction was not enough. The lie had been spoken publicly. Its destruction had to be equally visible. Nathaniel seemed to understand. He returned to the center of the chamber and surrendered his parliamentary offices. "I used my rank to condemn an innocent woman without proof," he said. "Until I have repaired the harm caused by that choice, I am unfit to exercise authority over others." Then he signed control of Evelyn's marriage trust and personal property back to her, without conditions. He established a separate inheritance for Charlotte that no future decision of his could touch. Finally, he recognized Evelyn as independent auditor of Ashbourne, with authority to publish every recovered account. When the chamber emptied, Nathaniel approached her. "I have arranged rooms for you and Charlotte at the townhouse," he said. "I will stay elsewhere." Evelyn studied him. "You are not asking me to forgive you. No, I am asking what else must be repaired." It was the first question he had asked, without assuming he deserved the answer. Evelyn looked toward Elias and Mary, reunited beneath Edward's portrait. She thought of Celia, who had died without seeing her son reclaim his name. She thought of Charlotte reaching for a father who had denied her before the world. "There is one thing left," she said. "You will return to the same chapel, before the same witnesses." Nathaniel's face tightened, but he nodded. "And after that?" "After that, I decide whether our marriage has anything left worth saving." 3 days later, the Ashbourne chapel stood blackened and roofless beneath the open sky. The witnesses gathered among the ashes. Evelyn arrived carrying Charlotte, but when Nathaniel stepped forward to meet them, she placed a sealed document on the ruined altar. It was a formal deed of separation. Nathaniel looked at the deed of separation, but did not touch it. Before the same witnesses who had heard him deny Charlotte, he faced Evelyn and their daughter beneath the chapel's ruined roof. "I accused my wife without proof," he said. "I stripped her of authority because I feared financial disgrace. I denied my lawful daughter and allowed my uncle to use my name against them both. Percival deceived me, but every choice that gave him power was mine." He restored Evelyn's household authority, property, and independent income. Charlotte's legitimacy was entered into the parish and parliamentary records. Copies of the correction were sent wherever the original accusation had traveled. Percival was convicted of forgery, embezzlement, kidnapping, attempted murder, and conspiracy. Morley was convicted for false imprisonment, forged medical testimony, and attempted murder. Celestine avoided imprisonment by testifying, but lost her social standing and received no Harcourt marriage. Elias retained his lawful name and inheritance rights. He and Mary established a home on land that had belonged to his mother. Agnes received a pension and became the first matron of a new clinic funded with the recovered money. Nathaniel finally picked up the separation deed. "If freedom is what you need," he told Evelyn, "I will sign." He did. Evelyn left Ashbourne with Charlotte and took control of her father's trust. She founded an independent accounting office that investigated mismanaged estates and protected widows from fraudulent settlements. Nathaniel did not pursue her. He repaired Ashbourne, compensated those harmed by Percival's theft, and publicly supported Evelyn's work without attaching his name to her achievements. A year later, Evelyn returned to the rebuilt chapel for Charlotte's christening. Nathaniel waited beside the font, but did not approach until Evelyn invited him. This time, the clerk handed the register to her first. Evelyn wrote Charlotte's name. Nathaniel signed beneath it, not as a man granting legitimacy, but as a father acknowledging what had always been true. When the ceremony ended, he asked whether he might walk with them through the garden. Evelyn considered him, then placed Charlotte's small gloved hand in his. "Only as far as the gate," she said. Nathaniel accepted the boundary. Together they stepped from the chapel, while Evelyn carried the register no one would ever tear from her hands again.